good evening, or should I be saying good morning? Because I am so very late with this broadcast, but I did not want to go to bed and end my day without showing up tonight for day 3 of 12 days of communication and confidence for parents who want to improve their communications with confident teen girls. My name is Tahira Bell, and I really enjoy helping teen girls with big ideas, learn how to make those powerful decisions with confidence as they're navigating through the really challenging teenage years. And as their life coach or as their workshop facilitator, one of the things that brings me the most joy is really being able to support them and watch them discover more and more of themselves and just really learn exactly who they are along the way. And today's one of those days. I don't know if you've ever had those days where you just know when you put your head on the pillow that you're just all smiles because all is well in your world. And everything is going to be okay. I'm just getting back. I got back a little while ago, a couple hours ago, about 11, from a birthday celebration. My niece is turning 18 tomorrow. So I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm feeling really old. But it's so funny how the evening has just been all about celebrating for me. We went to dinner. We celebrated with her. And before I left for that dinner, I actually had a coaching session, which I very rarely coach on Fridays, but this is a very special young lady and she wanted to have a session. And so we did, and it was all about celebrating her. And one of the things that is, it's just really something I really treasure and really cherish about working with girls is that you never know when they're going to have those breakthroughs. You just never know when they're going to have those moments. And so today was one of them for her. And so we were on the phone for about an hour and a half, just having a coaching session and celebrating. And it was just a really good evening. And so I share all that to say that is why I did not make it on closer to 8 o'clock like I planned. But I'll make sure tomorrow it will be a lot earlier, because today I have a message for you that is one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. So, because it is so late, I'll make sure I go ahead and get started. Today's topic is, what do you believe? And for the purposes of this conversation, I specifically want you to think about, what do you believe as it pertains to your teenager, okay? So some of you may know, my husband and I, we have a nonprofit, and it's the Kendrell and Tahira Bell Believers Foundation. Our last name is Bell, and yes, we spell believers with 2 L's because we're kind of corny like that, and I just love it. I love it. And so you could ask any of the teens, that at least the ones that I've worked with directly in our foundation, because we have different facilitators that work with the teens at different times. But the groups that I run specifically all know that my favorite word is believe. And so today we're going to talk about it and talk about how you can really build a connection and build your daughter's confidence by really honing in on what you believe about her, okay? So that's what we're talking about today. And so it's funny, when I tell this to teens a lot, they kind of push back a little. And so I've had students tell me, why is believe your favorite word? And I tell them, I say, well, because everything starts with a belief. You can't do anything until you first believe that you can do it, right? That's always my argument. And so it always happens, somebody always says to me, well, don't you have to get the idea of whatever it is you're believing you can do first? And yeah, you do, they're not wrong, right? It's a chicken first or the egg first kind of thing. Which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? This is what I talk about. I talk about this all the time. What you believe in any situation is really, really powerful, because at the end of the day, your thoughts are going to control your words, and your words are going to control your actions. And I am sure this is something you've heard before, but we're going to talk about it because it's that important, okay? So what I did, I'm going to read this definition to you. I looked up the word believe, and today's topic is another one that really applies to boys and girls, okay? When you look up the word believe, if you look it up in the dictionary, it'll tell you, and I picked just my top 3 favorite definitions: to accept something as true or to feel sure of it, to hold an opinion, to have a firm or wholehearted religious conviction or persuasion, and this is my favorite one, to have a firm conviction as to the goodness, efficacy, or ability of something. And so if you look up the word efficacy, it's really about effort and just the ability to produce a desired result, okay? And so this is why this particular version of the definition is my favorite, because if you read it like having a firm conviction as to the goodness or the power to produce a desired result, if you think about that, when you think about what it means to believe, you realize that believing is all about taking action. It's a verb. And so when I talk about this with teens, I say, listen, the reason believe is my favorite word is because it's all about what you choose to take action towards, okay? So we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to ask you again and again, what do you believe about your team? When you start there, you can be so intentional with the words that come out of your mouth. And this is so important because our words, they have so much power over our children, right? You either speak life into them or you speak to them in a way that will bring them down. I don't know about you, but when it comes to my children, I don't want anyone speaking to them in any way other than to speak life into them. Now, I won't always have control over that, right? But I do have an opportunity to help them decide what they choose to believe about who they are. Okay, so let's talk about this. I'm going to give you an example. When I was in grad school, I went to grad school in Pittsburgh, and I had a young man as a student. I taught, it was 9th grade biology, and he came to me and he said, I want to be an A student. Let me tell you about him. I didn't laugh to his face. I didn't because I would never do that. But it was hilarious to me because if you saw him, you would, kind of think, you want to be an A student? You don't consistently come to class. You never have a book for class. You don't take notes. You don't, I don't even know what you're doing half the time while you're even here. He was that kind of kid, but he was funny, not, necessarily the class clown, but he had a sense of humor. And he had that, charm, so he could kind of talk his way out of things, okay, if you know what I mean. And so I remember thinking, you want to be an A student. So we had a conversation about it. We talked about, what does an A student do? What does an A student not do. And so, of course, me being the teacher, I was like, an A student studies, an A student takes notes, an A student, pays attention when the teacher is talking, an A student doesn't come to class late, right? So I was just rattling off all the perfect behaviors of an A student. And so he called me out. He was like, so-and-so has an A and he sleeps through your class every day. And so-and-so has an A and she, he was all over the place. It was hilarious. And it was true. So what I had to say to him was, listen, is that the type of A student that you want to be? And then I really called him out. I said, well, can you get an A if you're doing what they're doing? Because now it's becoming a comparison thing. And I just need to understand, what is the point? What is it that you want? He said he wanted to make A's. I said, okay. So this is what I need. This is before I knew anything about coaching, anything about personal development, right? This is what I said to him. I said, I need to know what type of a student you have to be in order to make A's. What does an A student for you look like? Because it isn't the same for everyone. So that was the first thing I asked him. I said, okay, tell me who you have to be to make an A. What type of student are you going to be? And I let him tell me. And then the second question was, okay, so you want to make these A's. Are you going to look at me sideways and give me attitude and, all that kind of stuff when I hold you to it? When I hold you accountable for what you just told me you want, how are you going to respond? And so he had to think about it. And that was important because before I took the time to really invest in this particular student, I needed to know if he was committed. But I also needed to know what he genuinely believed that he could do. What did he believe that he could commit to? Because remember, believe is about taking an action. So I needed to know, listen, what are your action steps? What are you going to do? And how will I be sure that you're going to continue when I'm not looking? And how can I be sure that when I hold you accountable to what you want, you're not going to change your mind? Well, the truth is I could never be sure, right? But I didn't tell him all that because I made the decision to believe what he was telling me. And so what I would do is, I told you he wasn't like the type of student to always have a book or a pen or, none of the things that he really is supposed to have. So when he kind of slipped back into that mode, he was very smart. So he really didn't really need to do anything but listen because he was very, auditory. He could take it in and it would stick. If I was talking, doing a lecture, or we were doing an activity, whatever it was, and he just kind of was, just kind of sitting there, just doing nothing, not being disrespectful, not being disruptive, but just doing nothing, I would go sit on his desk. And so it became kind of a joke, like, why are you sitting on my desk? Well, that was how I would hold him accountable. That was like his wake-up call, because the first time I explained it, I said to him, listen, you don't need it, so why wouldn't I sit on it? Right? And so it was like this running joke, and it just kind of, jolted him back into place and reminded him of who he said he wanted to be. It reminded him of who he told me he believed he could be. And so when I did that as his teacher, nobody else in the room had to know what was going on, but I was still able to hold him accountable to what he wanted for himself. It wasn't about me. And I told him all the time, I'm done. I'm out of school, right? I've graduated high school. So this is on you. And it worked out really well. He was really a good kid. And so I wanted to use that example because it really shows how believing in yourself and believing in another person is really about the action that you're going to take. And this is where you have such a good opportunity as a parent, okay? So again, I'm going to ask you, what do you believe about your daughter? What do you believe about your son? Okay? When you speak, the things that you say, they stick with the person, even subconsciously, normally subconsciously. They stay inside that person. And so the same student I just told you about, I got to know him over, I was there for a year. I found out that when he was, younger, and still to that day, and probably even still now, who knows, his nickname at home was Dumb MF. Okay. That's what his mom used to call him, like kind of as a nickname. And so if you can imagine hearing someone say to you all the time that you're a dumb MF, what is that going to make you believe about yourself on a subconscious level? Because he would tell you he's smart. He was smart. But that wasn't reinforced. That wasn't the message that he was getting up here and then ultimately taking to heart, right? So he had to overcome that and had to be able to say, you know what I'm being called is not who I am. And that's a conversation I have with my own kids, right? When you have younger kids and they're name calling and doing all that kind of stuff, and someone calls you an idiot or whatever the case may be, I'll say to them, hey, well, are you? Are you stupid? Are you a stupid idiot? That's what my kids, they tattletale and they'll say that. And so I'll ask them, is that who you are? I'll say, no, that's just what he called me. Well, okay, then. That means he's a liar. It doesn't mean that he's able to define you. That's a powerful thing because society will always define us however they want. Society will always put a label on you, but you don't have to believe it. And as a parent, it's our responsibility to teach our kids that they don't have to believe it, okay? And so there are exceptions. I'm not saying that, it doesn't always work to tell someone exactly who they are, right? Because you can tell someone who they are and it could be a great thing. It could be a very positive thing. I like to think about Serena Williams for that, right? Her dad told her she was a tennis player from day one. From day one. He made that decision for her. And it worked, right? But by the time she was old enough, there had to be a time where she bought into it as well, or it never would have worked. Okay? And so what is that? What is that about, right? As a parent, you have an opportunity to have so much vision for your child's life. And when they're young, you can tell them you're gonna be a tennis player. You are a tennis player. You can tell them anything. But by the time they're teenagers, they really have to buy into it because ultimately, who does the work? They do. They do. And so, the idealist in me, just loves the thought of my vision as the parent being exactly the same as their vision as the teenager, right? And it can happen. Who's to say it can't? It may not, right? But this is what I do know. This is what you can do, okay? You can choose your words carefully. You know how we label our kids sometimes, and it's not with any type of, negative intention, but we do it, right? This is my shy one. This is my funny one. He's so bad, right? I have one I always say he's my bad one, but I'll never say it to his face. I tell him he's a good boy. He's smart, right? And it's kind of a joke that my husband and I have. But I have another one who's a pretty big kid. And so peers and teammates and even other parents and teachers are starting to try. I'm his mother, so it's not going to go but so far. But, he talked to me the other day about labels that people are starting to put on him. And if you know him, you know that none of them even make sense. But it's my responsibility to say, hey, is that who you are? No. Okay, then. So do you have to believe that to be true about yourself? No. But we have to teach them that. We have to teach them what they can accept and what they have to reject. Okay? You can never control what other people are going to say. But you can control what your response is to it. You can control if you're going to believe it or not. Does that make sense? Hi, Lisa. I remember you from so long ago. Oh my goodness. Are you a night owl like me? Out here on this Facebook Live in the middle of the night. Thank you so much for joining. It's good to see you. Okay, where was I? What can you do? All right, so first, choose your words carefully. Here's the second thing. Be intentional. Be very intentional about what you give your attention to. And so for this example, I'm going to talk about another parent I spoke to the other day. She has a daughter who is really, really good at soccer. Okay, she's a great soccer player from what I understand. And so she's looking at middle schools for her daughter, and she's trying to decide between two different schools. Well, one of the schools, her fear is that when her daughter gets there, she's going to be the great soccer player. Not necessarily a bad thing, right? But again, as the parent, you have to be intentional about what you want to give attention to. And so for this parent, she made the decision that she wants her daughter to be the good soccer player after school when she's on the soccer field. But during school, her daughter is also a very gifted artist. And so her concern is that if she goes to, the soccer school where her daughter's going to be this, standout athlete, the environment of this particular school won't support, this artist that's inside of her. And so what she's doing as this girl's mother is really giving her daughter the best of both opportunities, right? She's allowing her to flourish as the soccer player in one environment and flourish as the artist in the other. And by doing that, she's preventing her daughter from stepping into a situation where someone else is going to define who she is. And I just love that. I was so encouraged by that, because the final point that I want to make for tonight is that you have to be prepared and accept that all of their experiences are part of their journey, right? And so for this girl, could you imagine how much more enriching and rewarding and balanced her life will be, because she's got this one area where she can excel athletically, and then a whole different dimension to who she is. So she's developing and exploring two very different sides of who she is. And it's, no one knows what she's going to ultimately do with her life professionally, or who she's ultimately going to be once she's an adult. But how amazing is it that her mother took the time to be intentional about when and where she channels her attention? She's supporting both sides of who this girl is. And that is how you prevent, even well-intentioned people, right, from putting labels and, just kind of telling your kids who they are. When it matches, when it's a good fit, it's a beautiful thing. My own husband had that situation. He had someone literally speak life into him about what he was going to do. He said, listen, I see something in you. It was his coach said he was going to play football, and he did. So there are times when you can have someone that's speaking life into your child, and maybe someone who sees something like this coach who saw something that maybe his parents and even himself didn't see. I have no problem with that, right? That's a great thing. But when you see it as a parent, that's when you have that precious opportunity to put your children in those situations where they can step into who they are. That's my favorite part of coaching, is watching the teen girls that I work with, because I work with teens, really step into who they are, really discover what they're about, because it's ultimately all about them. Remember, even for the parent who makes that declaration, like the Venus and Serenas of the world, that you're going to be the greatest tennis players, they have to buy into it or it doesn't work. Okay? That's pretty much what I'm going to leave you with, for this evening. One thing that I always do in a coaching session is give my girls life work. And so it's like homework, but for your life, right? I'd love to challenge you to try this, okay? And you have the prompt right here on the Facebook post. What do you believe? I don't know if you all are journalers. It's something that I'm, on again, off again a lot. I'm not a journal every day kind of person. I'm working on it because I believe in the power of it and I love it. And I love teaching my girls how to journal and recommending. I give every client a journal because there's just so much good in being able to write out your thoughts, your feelings, your goals, what you want. And so what I would love to challenge you all to do is sometime between, now and the end of the year, ask yourself, what do I believe about my daughter? What do I believe about my son? And write it down. Write about it. Because you may surprise yourself. You may discover something that you didn't even think of before. I know with my children, I have journals for each of them. And sometimes I use them to, write letters to them. But sometimes I use it to write about who they are. So even when they were babies, I could, describe their character and their mannerisms and what they do, so that one day they can read it, right? And just see who they are through my eyes as they were growing up. And so that's just something I enjoy doing. I just wanted to pass it along because it came to mind, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of these 12 days. Thank you to all of you who are catching this video on the replay because it's 1:00 in the morning. But at least we're here. At least we got it in. We finished day 3, and I will see you all tomorrow for day 4. Thank you.